Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're going to be taking a deep dive into some really cutting-edge cancer research.
Yeah.
Eterna Therapeutics,
hmm
they just came out with a press release December 3rd, 2024.
Oh, wow.
And it's got us pretty excited about a potential breakthrough in cell therapy. So
Yeah.
what is it about this press release that has you so excited?
Oh, well, I think what is so interesting is how they're approaching solid tumors,
Okay.
especially those that are notoriously hard to treat, like certain types of ovarian and breast cancer. And they're not going after the cancer directly, but rather sort of harnessing the power of the body's own immune system.
Okay, so let's break down exactly what they're proposing. So their press release focuses on this new cell therapy candidate called ERNA 101.
Right.
And get this, they've partnered with the University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center
Oh.
to research whether this treatment, RNA 101, can actually train the body's immune system to fight off those specific cancers.
That's right. And I think to understand why this is such a big deal, we need to understand a bit about how traditional cancer treatments work
Okay.
and why this new approach is so different. So, for example, chemotherapy attacks cancer cells directly,
Right.
but it also damages healthy cells in the process, which leads to, some pretty harsh side effects.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So with this new therapy, instead of going after the cancer directly, you're saying that they're trying to give the body's own defense system an upgrade.
Exactly. And that's where things get really fascinating. ERNA 101 is described as an allogeneic IL-7 and IL-15 secreting induced pluripotent stem cell, or iPSC, derived mesenchymal stem cells, or IMSC product candidate.
Okay, so that's a mouthful.
Yeah.
I think we're going to need you to unpack that one for us. What are iPSCs?
Yeah.
And what are IMSCs, and what role they play in all of this?
Okay, so think of iPSCs like those building blocks you played with as a kid, right? They're cells that can be transformed into any other type of cell in the body.
So they're like a blank slate for cells.
Precisely. And in this case, Eterna is transforming these iPSCs into IMSCs.
Yeah.
And these IMSCs are then engineered to release these special proteins called IL-7 and IL-15. And these proteins are like signal flares that alert the immune system to the presence of cancer cells.
So these IMSCs are like the messengers telling the immune system, like, hey, there's a problem over here. You need to take care of this.
Exactly.
Got it. And
That's a great way to put it.
okay.
Yeah. And what makes this particularly groundbreaking is that Eterna is developing ERNA 101 as an allogeneic therapy.
Okay, allogeneic. What does that mean, and why is that so important?
So it means that the cells used in the therapy can come from a healthy donor
Okay.
and be used for any patient rather than having to be made individually for each person.
Oh, wow.
So
That's a big deal.
it is. If this works, it could significantly impact the accessibility and affordability of this treatment.
So no more, waiting for weeks or even months for personalized treatment.
Exactly.
That's incredible. I am curious, though.
Yeah.
How does this approach compare to other cell therapies out there? Is Eterna the only company working on something like this?
That's a great question, and one that we'll dive into a little bit later.
Okay.
There are definitely other companies working on cell therapies, but what makes Eterna's approach so unique is this combination of using iPSC-derived IMSCs as the delivery system,
Okay.
making it allogeneic.
So it's not just about those IL-7 and IL-15 proteins,
Right.
but it's also the how.
Exactly.
Eterna seems to have found a really unique way to deliver these signals to the immune system.
Yeah, and this potential for off-the-shelf availability could make a huge difference for patients, especially those with aggressive cancers that need treatment quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But it is important to remember that this is still early stage research.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that.
Yeah.
What are some of the challenges that Eterna might face in trying to bring ERNA 101 to market? I mean, working with the immune system just seems incredibly complex.
Absolutely. One of the biggest hurdles is ensuring that the immune system doesn't overreact and attack healthy tissues.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to cure one problem and then create another.
Exactly. Researchers are constantly refining these therapies to minimize the risk of side effects, but it's definitely a balancing act.
Yeah.
And another challenge lies in the manufacturing process for allogeneic cell therapies. It's a relatively new area, and scaling up production to meet potential demand will require, significant advancements in manufacturing techniques.
Right, so there are definitely hurdles to overcome. But the potential payoff here seems massive. So what are some of the key things that we should be looking for as this research progresses?
Well, the next big step for Eterna is submitting an investigational new drug, or IND, application to the FDA.
Oh, yeah, I remember seeing that mentioned in the press release. Can
Yeah.
you explain what an IND is and why it's so important?
So an IND is basically a request to the FDA to start testing a new drug or therapy in humans.
So it's kind of like getting permission to move from the lab to the clinic.
Precisely. The IND package will include all the preclinical data that Eterna has gathered so far, demonstrating the safety and potential efficacy of ERNA 101.
And if the FDA gives them the green light, that means that they can start clinical trials.
That's right. And those trials will be crucial to determining whether ERNA 101 lives up to its promise in real-world patients. They'll be looking at things like dosage, safety, and of course how effective it is at shrinking tumors and improving survival rates.
Yeah, it sounds like those trials will be the real test for ERNA 101.
Yeah.
What kind of timeline are we looking at for all of this?
It's hard to say for sure, as the drug development process is notoriously lengthy and complex. But if everything goes smoothly, we could potentially see early stage clinical trials beginning within the next year or two.
Okay. Well, it sounds like we'll have to stay tuned and see how things unfold. Yeah. But before we get ahead of ourselves, I do want to go back to something that you mentioned earlier about other companies working on similar therapies.
Right.
While Eterna's approach is unique in some ways, they're not alone in exploring this potential of cell therapy to treat cancer. For example, there are companies working on CAR T-cell therapy.
Right.
Now, is that the same CAR T-cell therapy that the press release mentioned as a potential combination treatment with ERNA 101?
It is, yeah. And that's a really interesting point that is worth exploring further. CAR T-cell therapy is another type of immunotherapy that has shown some really remarkable results
Wow.
for some blood cancer.
Okay, so can you explain a little bit about how CAR T-cell therapy works and why this potential combination with ERNA 101 has researchers so excited?
Yeah, so with CAR T-cell therapy, scientists take a patient's own T-cells. These are the immune cells that directly attack and destroy invaders.
Yeah.
And they engineer them in the lab to better recognize and attack cancer cells.
So it's like giving those T-cells a superpowered upgrade.
Exactly. And this approach has been incredibly successful for some types of leukemia and lymphoma, but it hasn't been as effective for solid tumors like the ones Eterna is targeting.
Yeah, that makes sense. Solid tumors are notoriously tricky to treat. So is the idea that by combining ERNA 101 with CAR T-cell therapy, they can somehow overcome those challenges?
Yeah, that's the hope. Think of it this way. CAR T cells are like highly trained soldiers,
Okay.
but sometimes they have trouble infiltrating and surviving within the hostile environment of a solid tumor.
So they need some backup.
Exactly. And then that's where ERNA 101 comes in. By boosting the overall immune response and potentially creating a more favorable environment within the tumor, it could prime the battlefield, so to speak, for the CAR T cells to do their job more effectively.
So instead of just using one really powerful weapon, they're combining two different approaches
Right.
to create this kind of like synergistic effect.
It's a very exciting concept, and the early research suggests that it could be a really potent combination, but of course, more research is needed to confirm these findings.
So it sounds like Eterna has a lot going on. They're not just developing a single therapy,
Right.
but they're developing a whole platform for engineering iPSCs into these IMSC delivery trucks.
That's what's so intriguing about Eterna's approach. If this core technology proves successful, it opens up a whole world of possibilities.
So it's not just about IL-7 and IL-15. They could potentially swap out those proteins for others that have different effects on the immune system or even target different aspects of the disease.
Exactly, yeah. They could potentially develop therapies for a wide range of cancers and even other diseases beyond cancer. Imagine being able to engineer IMSCs to deliver therapeutic proteins for autoimmune disorders, neurodegenerative diseases, even infectious diseases.
Wow, so the potential applications here seem limitless.
It's pretty amazing.
It feels like we're on the cusp of like a new era in medicine.
It's definitely an exciting time to be following this field.
Yeah. But let's not get too carried away here. So we've talked about the potential benefits and the challenges of ERNA 101, but what about the bigger picture? What are the broader implications of Eterna's core technology?
Well, one of the most significant implications is the potential to democratize access to these kinds of cutting-edge therapies.
Right, you touched on that earlier when we were talking about the allogeneic aspect of ERNA 101. If they can create these off-the-shelf cell therapies, it could make them much more affordable and
Exactly.
accessible to patients worldwide.
Exactly. Yeah, and that can have a profound impact on global health, especially in developing countries where access to advanced medical treatments is often limited.
It's inspiring to think that this technology could potentially level the playing field when it
Yeah.
comes to accessing these life-saving therapies.
Yeah, it's powerful.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's a powerful reminder that scientific innovation can be a force for good in the world.
for sure. But of course, there are also ethical considerations that need to be addressed as this technology evolves.
Of course.
Yeah. We need to make sure that these advancements are used responsibly and ethically.
Absolutely.
But for now, I'm really excited to see how this research unfolds.
Yeah, me too, me too. Eterna Therapeutics is definitely a company to watch.
Yeah.
Their work could have a major impact on the fight against cancer and potentially many other diseases.
Well, this deep dive has definitely given us a lot to think about. We've gone from a single press release
Yeah.
to exploring the cutting edge of cell therapy
Hmm.
and its potential to revolutionize medicine as we know it.
And that's just scratching the surface. There's so much more to learn and discover in this rapidly evolving field.
Absolutely. Before we wrap up part one, I want to leave our listeners with something to ponder.
Okay.
We've talked a lot about the potential benefits of Eterna's technology,
Yeah.
but what about the potential risks?
Right.
What are some of the things that could go wrong?
Yeah.
And how might they impact the future of this research?
That's a great question, and one we'll delve into further in part 2. Join us next time as we continue our deep dive into the world of Eterna Therapeutics and explore the potential challenges and ethical considerations surrounding this groundbreaking technology. Welcome back. So before the break, we were talking about the potential risks and ethical considerations surrounding Eterna's groundbreaking technology.
Right, because as exciting as all of this sounds, I imagine there were some potential downsides
Of course.
or unforeseen consequences that we need to think about.
Absolutely, yeah. Anytime you're dealing with something as complex as the human body,
Yeah.
and especially the immune system, there's always a chance things could go wrong.
Okay, so what are some of the specific risks associated with RNA 101?
Mhm.
We talked earlier about the risk of the immune system overreacting and attacking healthy tissues.
Right. It's called an autoimmune response.
Okay.
And it's a major concern with any kind of immunotherapy.
Is there any way to predict or prevent that from happening?
Well, researchers are working on ways to better control the immune response and minimize the risk of these side effects. So one approach is to engineer the IMSCs to release specific types of signaling molecules that dampen down the immune response once the cancer cells have been eliminated.
So it's like adding a built-in safety switch.
Exactly. Another risk to consider is the potential for long-term effects that we might not be aware of yet. This is a relatively new field,
Right.
and we're still learning about how these therapies interact with the body over time.
So there could be unforeseen consequences
Yeah.
that don't show up right away.
That's always a possibility
Got it.
with any new medical treatment.
Okay.
So, yeah, long-term monitoring of patients who receive these therapies will be crucial to identify any potential issues.
So what about the ethical considerations surrounding allogeneic cell therapies?
Right.
Are there any concerns about, using cells from a donor?
There are definitely ethical considerations that need to be very carefully addressed. One concern is ensuring informed consent from donors.
So they need to fully understand the risks and benefits
Yeah.
of donating their cells.
Yeah, absolutely. Another issue is ensuring equitable access to these therapies.
Right.
We talked about the potential for allogeneic therapies to make treatment more affordable and accessible, but we need to make sure that that doesn't create a two-tiered system where only certain people can afford these life-saving treatments.
Yeah, that's a really important point. We need to make sure that these advancements benefit everyone,
Yes.
not just a select few.
For sure. And then there are the broader societal implications to consider.
Okay.
If we can engineer cells to treat a wide range of diseases, it raises questions about, what it means to be human
Wow.
and how far we should go in manipulating our biology.
Those are some big questions.
Yeah.
That's a lot to think about. It sounds like there's a lot to consider beyond just the science itself.
Absolutely. These are complex issues that require careful thought and discussion.
So how do we navigate these ethical challenges as this technology continues to evolve?
Well, it starts with open and transparent communication. Scientists, ethicists, policymakers, and the public all need to be involved in the conversation.
Yeah, we need to have a real societal dialogue
Yeah.
about how to use this technology responsibly.
Exactly. We need to establish clear guidelines and regulations to ensure these advancements are used ethically and for the benefit of all humankind.
So it sounds like we need a multifaceted approach
We do.
to really address all these challenges.
We do. We need to balance scientific progress with ethical considerations to ensure that these advancements lead to a better future for everyone.
You know, I have to say, I'm still incredibly excited about the potential of ERNA 101 and Eterna's core technology, but I really appreciate you bringing up these potential risks
Of course.
and ethical considerations. It's important to look at all sides of the story here.
I agree. It's important to be both optimistic and cautious when dealing with such powerful technology.
So where do we go from here? What are some of the key things we should be watching for as this research progresses?
Well, keep an eye out for news about Eterna's IND submission to the FDA.
Right.
If they get approval to begin clinical trials, that will be a major milestone.
Because that means they can actually start testing ERNA 101 in humans and getting real-world data.
Exactly. And as those trials progress, we'll start to get a better sense of the therapy's safety and efficacy.
Now, are there any other companies or research groups working on similar approaches that we should be paying attention to?
Absolutely. The field of cell therapy is incredibly dynamic with lots of exciting research happening all over the world.
Any particular standouts that you're following?
Well, there's a group at Stanford University that's doing some fascinating work
Oh, wow.
with engineered immune cells called natural killer cells.
Okay.
They're similar to T cells, but have some unique properties that makes them potentially well-suited for fighting solid tumors.
So they're kind of like the Navy SEALs of the immune system.
That's a great analogy, yeah. And there are other companies exploring different ways to engineer iPSCs and IMSCs for therapeutic purposes.
It seems like this field is it's exploding with possibilities.
It really is. And the pace of innovation is only accelerating. It's a truly exciting time to be following this field.
So in a way, Eterna Therapeutics is just the tip of the iceberg. They're at the forefront of a much larger movement that's really pushing the boundaries of what's possible in medicine.
I think that's a great way to put it. Eterna's research is a window into the future of medicine, a future where we can harness the power of our own cells to fight disease
Wow.
and improve human health in ways we never thought possible.
That is really, it's a future that I'm very excited about. But before we get lost in all the possibilities, let's bring it back to Eterna and ERNA 101.
Right, right. It's important to remember that while the potential is enormous,
Yeah.
there's still a long road ahead. We need to see how ERNA 101 performs in clinical trials, and we need to address those ethical considerations we discussed.
But if everything goes well, this could truly be a game changer for patients with hard-to-treat cancers.
It could indeed. And that's what makes this research so compelling. You know, it's not just about advancing science, it's about improving people's lives.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We've explored the science behind ERNA 101, the potential benefits and risks, the ethical considerations,
Right.
and the broader implications of Eterna's core technology.
And we've only just begun to scratch the surface. There's so much more to explore in this rapidly evolving field.
Before we move on to part 3, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought-provoking question.
Okay.
We've talked a lot about the potential for ERNA 101 to treat ovarian and breast cancer. But Eterna also mentions in their press release that this technology could be applied to a wide range of cancers.
That's right.
So what are some of the other cancers that might benefit from this approach?
Yeah.
And what are the scientific and logistical challenges of adapting this technology to different types of cancer?
Those are great questions, and ones we'll delve into further in part 3. Join us next time as we continue our exploration of Eterna Therapeutics and the future of cancer treatment.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Eterna Therapeutics. So before we took a break, we were talking about the potential for ERNA 101 to be used to treat other types of cancer, not just ovarian and breast cancer.
Right. You know, their platform technology isn't limited to just one type of cancer. The key here is really understanding how those different cancers, how they interact with the immune system, and then kind of tailoring those IMSCs to deliver the right signals.
So let's just say, for example, they wanted to target lung cancer. What would that process look like?
Well, first, researchers, they would need to identify the specific immune signals that are really effective, most effective at triggering a response against lung cancer cells.
So it wouldn't necessarily be the same IL-7 and IL-15 proteins that they're using for ovarian and breast cancer.
Not necessarily, no. You see different types of cancers, they express different proteins on their surface, and they interact with the immune system in unique ways.
So it's kind of like finding the right key for each lock.
Exactly, yeah. Once they've identified the right signals, then they can engineer those IMSCs to produce those specific proteins.
That makes sense. But wouldn't that make the development process a lot more complex and time-consuming?
Yeah.
Having to essentially start from scratch for each new type of cancer.
It would definitely add some complexity, yeah. But remember, Eterna's core technology, it's very modular. They have this platform for generating the iPSCs and differentiating them into IMSCs. The main difference here would really be in that genetic engineering step where they're inserting those genes for the specific signaling proteins.
So they've got this solid foundation that they can kind of build on, which could potentially speed up the development process for these new therapies.
Right, exactly. And as they gain more experience and knowledge about how different cancers interact with the immune system, they can really kind of refine their approach and become much more efficient at developing these targeted therapies.
Okay, so are there any other types of cancer that you think might be especially well suited to this approach?
Well, I think cancers that are known to be what we call immunogenic, so meaning that they tend to provoke a strong immune response already,
Okay.
those would be really good candidates.
Any specific examples come to mind?
Yeah, melanoma.
Okay.
It's a type of skin cancer, and it's known to be very responsive to immunotherapy.
Interesting.
There's already an FDA-approved immunotherapy drug out there called ipilimumab, and it works by blocking a protein called CTLA-4. It kind of acts as a brake on the immune system.
Okay.
Yeah,
So Eterna could theoretically engineer IMSCs to produce a protein that has a similar effect as this ipilimumab.
exactly, yeah. Or they could potentially target other immune checkpoints, like PD-1. That's the target of another really successful class of these immunotherapy drugs.
This is really opening my eyes to just how much potential this technology has.
Yeah.
It's like a whole new toolbox for fighting cancer.
It really is, yeah. And the beauty of it is that it's not limited to just using single proteins, you know? They could engineer the IMSCs to produce combinations of proteins
Wow.
that
Right.
work together to create an even more potent response.
So it's not just about finding the right key, but potentially creating a master key that kind of unlocks multiple pathways in the immune system.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. The possibilities are really quite exciting.
But of course, as we discussed before, there are also challenges and risks to consider,
Absolutely.
especially as we start talking about engineering cells to produce multiple proteins and potentially targeting different pathways all at once.
Absolutely, yeah. Complexity brings with it, potential for these unforeseen consequences. Rigorous safety testing here will be really important, paramount as the technology keeps evolving.
And we need to remember that not all cancers are created equal.
Right.
Some are more susceptible to this kind of immunotherapy than others.
That's a really important point. Yeah, while ERNA 101 and other cell therapies hold this huge promise,
Yeah.
they aren't a magic bullet.
Yeah.
We still have a long way to go in understanding how complex the immune system is and really how to harness it effectively against all these different types of cancer.
So it's a combination of optimism and realism,
Yes.
right? We need to be excited about the potential, but also acknowledge the challenges that are ahead.
I think that's a great way to sum it up, yeah. The future of cancer treatment, it's looking brighter than ever,
Yeah.
but it will require this continued dedication, innovation, and collaboration to really fully realize the potential of these therapies.
Well, this deep dive has been a really incredible journey. We've gone from deciphering a single press release
Yeah?
to really exploring the potential and the complexity of cell therapy and its role in fighting cancer.
And we've learned about Eterna Therapeutics,
Yeah.
a company that's really pushing the boundaries of what's possible in medicine with its really innovative platform technology.
It's been a fascinating conversation, and I hope our listeners have come away with a better understanding of this field
Yeah,
and the exciting possibilities that lie ahead.
absolutely. It's a good reminder that the pursuit of knowledge and innovation, it's an ongoing journey. There's always more to learn and discover.
So to our listeners, we encourage you to keep exploring,
Yes.
keep asking questions,
Yeah.
keep diving deep into this world of science and medicine.
And remember, the future of healthcare is in all our hands. By staying informed and engaged, we can all contribute to shaping a healthier future
Yeah.
for everyone.
Absolutely. Until next time, keep exploring.